Hey cats, it's Ed, midsole bud here. I've had numerous requests from the viewers to compare the Asics Novablast 3 up against the rest. And by the rest I mean a load of other shoes of very similar functionality and capabilities. There's so many shoes you can compare this one up against, let's get to it. Thanks for joining me on the channel once again, people. It is always appreciated. It's great that you all continue to want to sail on the good ship EDDBUD. Help the channel out to continue to grow by hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell below for notifications when I roll out those new vids for you. Also give this video a thumbs up, like and share it with your running buddies. You can give me a super thanks as well down below to help support the channel on an ad hoc basis if you've got a particular question you want to get straight to the mind of the EDDBUD. So comparing the Novablast 3 from Asics up against a few shoes today for you. First shoe up in comparison is the Puma Velocity Nitro 2. So the Puma's a touch lower to the ground in terms of its feel than the Novablast 3. A little firmer, though I'd suggest it's a close call in terms of cushion. I'm finding the toe box width and height actually quite similar between these two shoes. On my most recent runs I think they're probably about as close as you're going to get in terms of comparison. Tongue thickness is very similar, as is the amount of padding that you've got around the heel. In fact, the more you look at it, the more and more close these two shoes are. The Novablast 3 does have a little bit more width in terms of that widest midfoot area, but they're very close in terms of the heel surface area too. I think the Puma certainly feels somewhat more traditional as a running shoe compared to the Novablast 3. I mean that in terms of you've got a sort of softer foam underfoot and then some more common EVA type stuff a bit closer to the floor. It really does make for a nice combination here. I do find this shoe perhaps a little bit more stable than the Novablast 3. I think for daily miles the Puma Velocity Nitro 2 is a great do-it-all shoe. It can kind of do all the different things you might want it to do. It's not really a master of any of them, but then again, kind of useful to have a shoe like that in the rotation. Probably not one I'd select for longer runs though. I think that's where the Novablast 3 really comes into play. A little bit more forgiving in terms of that Flight Foam Blast Plus, though I do think that the Puma grip material does have the beating of the stuff we've got in the Novablast 3. It's really its only downfall. This one's coming in a touch cheaper though, and as such I think it's probably the better deal and it wins this round. Also good for low light situations. Up next is that workhorse daily trainer, the Nike Pegasus 39. I really enjoyed this iteration of the Pegasus. It's got all the things that I liked about the 35 and the 36 and kind of removed the things I didn't like about the 37 and 38. Some people might find the use of that React foam and the dual AirPods perhaps a little bit jarring. I find it a little bit more responsive than some of the other foam only shoes that we've had over the last couple of years. Just seems to deliver a bit more of a return. Maybe you'd get a bit more longevity out of it as well. I think they're Zoom Air units, in fact, in both the forefoot and the rear. I think the Pegasus 39 just does a little bit more for me. It's just a little bit more of an exciting ride, I suppose. I kind of like shoes that do lots of things and enable me to kind of tailor my run as I'm out there. And this one lets you run lots of different types of things. You could do some intervals, perhaps some repeats in it. You could run at tempo pace, no problem. It might feel like there's a little bit too much midsole, certainly in the heel, to really do that in the Novablast 3. Again, I feel the Asics shoe kind of outshines the Pegasus though in terms of long runs. I think if that's in order within your training, then you could probably look at the Asics shoe rather than the Nike this time. We've got a more modern foam there, perhaps there's a little bit more cushion, could be a little bit more forgiving over the greater distance. I think the more nimble Pegasus of this year certainly presents a better option for running at pace. We've got a slightly firmer return of those air units, which I think gives it a little edge over the Novablast 3. And it's quite the price difference as well. I think this one comes in around about 110 Earth credits. It's more like 135 Earth credits for the Novablast 3. There's about 30 grams difference between the two in favour of the Asics shoe, and there's about a centimetre less in terms of the widest point in the midfoot in the Pegasus 39. So a little bit narrower up front, certainly. I think it's a bit of a horses for courses situation here. I think the Asics actually is a little bit more versatile. You could use it for most things. The Pegasus 39 for me is just that little bit more responsive. Want to run a little faster in it. Again, I think the Nike here has a better outsole traction pattern. That could be make or break if you're thinking of picking up a shoe for the winter running. So little on the fence here. I think they're kind of horses for courses type shoes. You might want to pick both of them up. I can't really do a comparison video unless I use my benchmark shoe, the ADIZERO Adios 7. Oh, what a shoe. I love this one. About 30 grams lighter than the Novablast 3, though it has a much narrower base. It does feel a little bit more like a race shoe, this one. I think it's a great daily shoe. It does lots of things and very well for me, though I have quite a slight frame. If there's a strong breeze, there's a likelihood that I will fall over. I'm finding stability pretty good in both shoes this time around. There's about 1.5 centimeters extra width though in the Novablast 3, certainly in that widest midfoot area and in the heel. That is quite considerable. That could be make or break for you. There's a little bit more snap and pop when you toe off in the Adios 7. Does feel a little bit like a kit car. You're a bit lower to the floor. I really love the combination of foams here and the very well designed upper. It is much thinner actually, the upper, than the Novablast 3. I mean, you can practically see through it. This one's more perhaps of a high-end tempo shoe or race shoe for some people, rather than the trainer profile that we have with the Novablast 3. I think most people will find the Novablast 3 a little bit more consistent in terms of midsole cushion straight out of the box. You've got to put a little bit more work into the Adios 7 to free it up, so don't expect results instantly. It just seems like you need a few miles to loosen up that combination of foams in the Adidas shoe. Great for faster training and racing. For me, I feel it's quite a versatile sort of shoe. It will do lots of things, but I think it's down to your sort of body type. I think if you need the cushion for those knees, perhaps you're a veteran runner, more experienced runner, if you're going to be covering greater distances, I think that is the use case where the Novablast 3 will shine a bit more. Just a bit of a plusher upper, certainly in the heel, and it covers those longer distance efforts. Old school running shoe vibes in the Adidas, new school surface area and squish in the Asics. Last one up now, the Asics Gel Nimbus 24. So some similar tech here used in the midsole of the Nimbus 24. Both of these shoes have Flight Foam Blast Plus. Asics being very generous with that foam, putting it into lots of their stock shoes that have been around for a while. Application here a little bit more generous and utilised with that stability aiding gel. You've got a sort of more maximally cushioned ride. Yeah, it's still responsive. It's interesting to see though Asics moving away from the application of gel in some shoes, aside from the Nimbus and the Keanu. Now this comparison's a bit of an odd one. I know loads and loads of people in the UK that enjoy racing in the Nimbus series. That might seem a bit crazy, but over here people seem to love it. Lower in stack and it features those stability elements. It probably matches the Novablast 3 for longer distance efforts. It actually makes the Novablast 3 seem a little bit more simple and carefree, I suppose. There's just less going on. I'm not sure I particularly need all the stability elements that are featured within the Nimbus 24, and there's a good 50 grams extra weight in that shoe when compared to the Novablast 3. I'd certainly be shifting towards getting this shoe over the Nimbus 24. I think it has a number of advantages. Just feels like the foam's a little bit freer perhaps in this shoe. It's got a bit of room to breathe, and again with my very slight frame, I just don't feel I need the gel at all in the shoe. It's just adding extra weight that isn't required. The actual design of the shoes is quite different as well. You've got that almost Flyknit type material in the Nimbus 24 across through the tongue. The weight difference in hand is considerable, and you do feel it on foot as well. I mean, some people might find that the lower profile perhaps of the Nimbus 24 is more to their liking. I mean, both are generous in terms of heel padding once again. I think if you're ruled by stability, then the Nimbus 24 is the one to go for, certainly at those discounted prices that you can pick it up at now. But I'd suggest that I think the Novablast 3 is actually a more modern take on shoes. I think it's just that little bit more versatile and a little bit more fun and exciting as well. So I think if I had to have one, I'd pick the Novablast 3. That's all my comparisons for today, guys. If there's another shoe or a load of shoes that you want me to pair up against the Novablast 3, there'll be a part 2 coming soon. Musical interlude time. Today it comes from an interesting album that I found. It's actually an African artist, the artist Asaka, with the album Mr. Money with the Vibe. Really loving the production on this one. You've got a heavy African influence there. Really clear and interesting instrumentation as well. Really interesting rhythms there, as well as the selection of sounds and percussion. The track Terminator's particularly nice. I really like the vibe, really like the melody. Really nice calm vibes as well on another track called Organize. Really nice use of string samples as well on another track. I think it's called Peace Be Unto You. I just really like the difference in the beats. There's not this sort of overloaded bass all the time that kind of controls and takes charge of the track. things are just a little bit freer, a little bit more poppy here. Just a mixture of that type of production and some of the African dialects and the sound of the voice, I suppose. It's just really refreshing and different. I'm really enjoying it. Mr. Money with the Vive by Asaka. Thanks for tuning in, people. Always appreciated. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, you hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel out a huge amount, as does also sharing this video with your running buddies. Give us a thumbs up like too. That helps. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you.